Hi everybody. Um, Thank you for your patience as we were figuring out the dilemma with access codes. We are all learning here. I have taught for 10 years in a classroom, but I have never taught online. And so when you guys were like, hey, how do I access my book with my access code? I was like, great, what is an access code and why didn't I know about it? So anyway, apparently in the classes past, the book has been considered supplemental material, and you already have the PowerPoint slides built into your course, and those are required, so that was easy. If you have a hard copy of the book, I would keep it and I would use it and I would read it. I think it'll be very beneficial to you, especially in our writing assignments coming up, to use as support. I read through the first chapter today, and then I looked at the PowerPoint slides, and while they give you the information that you do need, I feel like maybe you need a little bit more context. And so I am going to go through, I'm going to do this every week as kind of a mini lecture. I will try and keep it short. Feel free, you can sit and watch me and write down notes, or like eat dinner and like wash dishes or whatever, but hopefully this will help give you a little bit of context for each chapter to go along with those PowerPoint slides. Okay, so we're looking at Chapter 1, Cultural Collaboration, Theater, and Society. I am going to try to explain myself as best as possible. This is now like my third or fourth try. I've gotten in 20 minutes and then really botched something up. So if I mess it up, I apologize. Anyway, here we go. All right, so the first chapter, the introduction. Theater is human beings coming together at a particular time and place for no other reason than to practice being human, perhaps with the shared but unspoken hope that someday we will get it right. Here we examine theater as two things: a place of performance and the process or institution of theater, which we define as dramatic art and entertainment performed live and deliberately by one or more actors for an audience present in the same physical space at the same time. Great definitions. In your discussion post this week, we talk about, let me just double check that I have the right thing, but defining art is a difficult task and is very subjective. What do you expect from an artistic experience? And I think thinking about the question, why do we go to the theater? Like, why would you decide to spend 2 hours out of your evening, driving out to a theater and sitting down and watching other people talk to each other on stage, or maybe it's a musical, maybe they're dancing and they're singing, but like, why do we do this? Which goes into, why do, at the end of a really long day, are we like, I just want to sit down and watch TV, or HGTV, or whatever your TV show is. And they talk about it here. Basically, we want an escape from reality, right? And so for those 2 hours or that 45 minutes or whatever that you're setting aside your time to go sit down and watch something, you are in the world of that actor. If you're watching Game of Thrones, you're in that world, right? And it's a nice distraction from everything, from homework, from work, from any like crazy kind of bad thing that you had happen, or just a way to wind down. It just kind of like, you're transported, and it's nice to not think about your life for a while you're engaged in this. So, and they talk about theater as entertainment and art. For a while, the audience member focuses on the world within the theater. So that might be a good place to start as far as what do we look for in an artistic experience. And hey, I want to hear different things. So if that is not your perspective, I want to hear it. They also talk about how older productions can affect us today. So Mousetrap, Agatha Christie's Mousetrap, which was written in 1952, they mention, even like 70 years later, so new generations feel the mounting tension as suspicion shifts from one eccentric character to another. And I need to give you information. I think Jack Yatsko is either in that or directing that, and he's another professor of theater at Vol State. So if you are looking for another play to review, that might be a good one for your homework assignment. So that's 70 years ago, but they also talk about Oedipus the King, which is a Greek tragedy. It was written by Sophocles in 430. We'll read that play later on this semester, but basically how the story can still be relevant today. Shakespeare can be relevant today if I know not all of you are from Middle Tennessee, but Tennessee Shakes Festival, they will put on 1 to 2 Shakespearean plays during the summer. And most of the time they're always set in a different time period, which is really cool, even though it's, Shakespeare and several hundreds of years old, depending on when you set it, it can still apply to us today. So they start talking about the social functions in theater, and you have the option, your first writing assignment, you can pick one of these and heavily research it and tell me about it. And so this is part of some of your options here. They talk about theater and religion. There's your first one. Theater shares many important connections with religious institutions. The earliest known theatrical presentations appear to have been steeped in religious ritual and dance. In ancient Egypt, priests reenacted stories of the gods, probably for an audience. Many other old societies, including those of Native Americans, Africans, and Southeast Asians, performed theatrical rituals led by a priest or shaman. They start talking a little bit about the Western theater is based more on the old Greek theater customs. Its development was associated with festivals celebrating and praising the Greek god Dionysus. Although it is difficult to say when, the Greeks moved from using theatrical performance as part of ritual to enjoying the performance for its own sake, while still using it to communicate important stories or information. But originally it was part of a festival to honor their gods. Unaware of the Greek legacy, the medieval Christian church introduced theatrical activity into religious service and then recognized the potential of theater as a means to familiarize a mainly illiterate public with biblical stories. If you ever have a chance to study theater history, this is a really interesting time period. If you can imagine in medieval times, productions that were like Super Bowl worthy, okay, stages built, buildings built, huge parade floats that would wheel their way through the town. Productions, whether it was telling like the story of Christ or Noah and the Ark, it was a way of communicating their religion to the common people who at the time couldn't read, or maybe they could read, they couldn't write, but then Bibles were not accessible to them yet. So this was a way of teaching them, the Bible and Bible stories. And specifically with Christianity, a lot of times theater is still used to today, you know, depending on the denomination, it can be used in Sunday school, if you think of like a vacation Bible school, youth groups, skits, mime performances, all of that stuff. It's still very, very much involved in religion. So you can research theater and religion. You can research theater and socialization. The Roman poet Horace defined the function of theater as to teach and to please. At times, the educational potential of theater has been considered its most important aspect, particularly as a way of passing on a society's rules of behavior. So they go into giving you a couple different examples here, including George Lilo's The London Merchant, written in 1731, the sad story of a young apprentice who fell into bad company, stole from his master, murdered his uncle, and suffered dire consequences. Basically, at the time, it was like, hey, you have a kid that's not going to listen, take him to see this play, and they'll be so freaked out by what could happen to them that they'll shape up. So it was a means of educating the younger generations, and he says, again, passing on society's rules of behavior. The most recent one, and this is kind of fun, if you can look past Disney and all of its spectacle, they bring up The Lion King. Okay, the first animated film and then a popular Broadway musical demonstrates that the circle of life is sacred and that in disrupting that natural balance, one risks losing everything. Okay, so theater and socialization, teaching the younger generations. All right, so you can do some research on that if you want that to be your topic. Your third one is theater and politics. Theater has frequently been used to reinforce the political status quo and build support for the government that is in power. Ruling monarchs were often praised in the plays of the 16th and 17th centuries. And they continue on in the 20th century. Going back, early American theater staged George Washington shortly after his death to honor and celebrate a cultural hero. So there was a production written in his honor. Audience watched an actor representing the first president ascend to heaven to be welcomed by the angels. Okay, so again, this is theater and politics, and it is the more positive reflection and perspective of politics. And it talks about, I underlined this because this is like one of my favorite musicals. If you want a good laugh and a good little history lesson, watch 1776. It has William Daniels in it as John Adams, and he's Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets World. Anyway, they talk about in the 20th century, the struggles of the founding fathers and mothers were memorialized in the musical 1776 as it created a lively human background for the birth of the Declaration of Independence. So again, a positive perspective. Theatrical performances have often been used to present propaganda material specifically designed to advocate a particular point of view to both support the status quo and challenge or undermine it, which leads us to theater and subversion, okay? And this is, although the theater often supports and maintains the dominant culture, it can also be used to subvert the status quo in society. So this is the negative aspect. Just as the theater can provide support for a society's values, it can also offer a public forum for challenge and disagreement. All right, so that might be another interesting thing to research for you. They talk about theater and coercion. So you had, this is all under theater and politics, okay? And you had like, yes, you know, good perspective. Then you had theater and subversion, which is like, you know, somebody writing from the negative aspect. And then you have theater and coercion, which recognizing its political power, very repressive governments have entirely coopted the theater along with the other arts in attempts to win the hearts and minds of the people. They give a couple of examples. In Germany during the 1930s, the Nazi regime used highly theatricalized political rallies and forbade the production of any plays that did not seem to support its political position. So basically saying you will only perform plays or sing songs or write books about things that support what, you know, we say you support. And if you don't, we kill you. They're terrible, terrible, terrible ramifications, okay? They bring up another example. Similarly, for many years, the only accepted style of art in the Soviet Union was socialist realism, which was judged by those in power to support and reflect the Soviet value system. Okay, so again, those other ones you might want to research, particularly, you know, Germany and what all that looked like, or the Soviet Union and what theater and coercion looked like there. Okay, then we move on to happier things. So theater and empowerment. Theatrical performances can be a tool for healing, for individual growth, and for facilitating group process. Okay, so this is using drama as a form of counseling. They talk about there is a Colorado council that was funded by the National Endowment for the Arts and helped to or use drama as a means to help the victims and their families from the Columbine shooting. They talk about you know, how they have been able to incorporate or not incorporate, but you know, alter so that the deaf and the hearing impaired audience members can still you know, get the full experience from live theater. And then they have a separate page on National Theater of the Deaf, which might be interesting for somebody to research. And then they go on to say the act of creating theater, along with the other arts, can have a therapeutic effect for those involved. Drama therapy is defined by the National Association for Drama Therapy, NADT, has the therapeutic goals of symptom relief, emotional and physical integration, and personal growth. Drama therapy is practiced in many different settings, including mental health facilities, nursing homes, schools, businesses, and correctional facilities. Again, your assignments are so open. I just want, you know, to know what you're interested in and write about it, you know. So, you know, do we have a Nashville or Gallatin, you know, NADT here? You know, do some research. Tell me about it. Another thing that you can research is theater and cultural exploration. This is the study of theater as a social institution is a vital method for learning about the goals and aspirations, the prejudices and blind spots, the good and the bad of different societies. Human beings create theater in the image of themselves, of how they see themselves or wish themselves to be. And they bring up a couple different examples. As with other art forms, theater can expand our cultural horizons. While watching Carol Churchill's Mad Forest, written in 1990, an English-speaking audience can begin to understand the despair and paranoia that were rampant in Romania during the rule of the dictator Ceausescu, and the subsequent joy and confusion after his fall. So basically, you know, live theater can help us in our understanding of how everything outside of America works, or maybe not even outside of America, maybe state to state, maybe city to city. So theater and cultural exploration, you could do a little bit of research on if you wished. Social control of theater. Although theater's potential for positive contribution is recognized in many societies, in other societies, this is not always the case. In some cultures and subcultures, any kind of theatrical activity has been and continues to be thought of as a threat to morality and to the entire fabric of society, and has been the target of many attempts at official control. And it goes into like a brief history, but that might be interesting to research as well. Social control of theater. Yeah, they give you a little bit of theater history here. They talk about, you know, even in Shakespeare's day, although, you know, the perspective was, you know, oh, they're performing, oh, they're famous, oh, you know, they're performing in front of kings and queens and the social elite and stuff. It says, although they might be recognized for superior artistic achievement, actors were still not welcome in the middle or upper class social circles. Interesting. Might be an interesting thing to research. They talk about more theater regulation. The history of the theater in England is an interesting example. In the 17th century, the Puritans sought to suppress theatrical performance because of the lying nature of character portrayal and disapproval of the theater's tendencies to distract its audience from more devout or useful activities. Basically saying, if you want to spend your time, you know, going to a theater, sitting down and watching a performance, you could be spending your time differently. So shame, okay? Or because the performers on stage are acting out another character, they were lying, okay? I'm on stage and I'm portraying, you know, this girl, and you know, she's upset with her family and so she's going to run away. But that's not what Natalie is doing, right? That's what the character is doing. But because as the character, that is what Natalie is pretending to do, Natalie's lying, therefore I'm like a threat to moral standards, okay? Very, very interesting. They talk about theater censorship. Fear of the power of the theater as a public forum for dissent has often resulted in strict censorship of dramatic material. Okay, so basically there are some plays that could not be done because, again, you know, the country did not want this play to rock the boat, you know. All right, they go on to theatrical choices in America. This is another, so you could write a paper on any of the other, you know, we went through them, theater and cultural exploration, theater and empowerment, theater and subversion, theater and coercion. You can write a paper on any of those things, or you can do some research into what you have locally, okay? And this is, they're kind of separating the types of theaters into little groups here. And so if you're going to do this one, I want you to pick a specific one and really research that, whether that is going down and interviewing, you know, the director of that theater or what have you. Give me the history, give me what they do, what shows come through there, all that good stuff. So they talk about professional theater. Professional theater is created by individuals who make a living, and they put in parentheses because this is like always so true, or at least attempt to do so in the theater. Okay, the professional venue can be commercial or nonprofit, and many theatrical artists and technicians work in both. Okay, Broadway and off-Broadway theaters, touring shows, and major residential theaters are professional. Okay, so if you take, in Nashville, there's like TPAC, okay, so Tennessee Performing Arts Center. The Nashville Repertory Theater would be your professional theater. All of those actors, they pretty much work for a living, whether, you know, some of them may be involved in film or doing other productions, but they are paid. So it is, Nashville Repertory Theater is a professional theater. Okay, they talk about commercial theater is meant to earn a profit for investors. Okay, typically a commercial company is put together for a specific production. A producer or producing organization finds a show that seems to have great potential for drawing an audience. Financial backing is usually sought beyond the resources of the producers. The hope is that money taken in at the box office and funds from foreign film and television rights as well as theme merchandise will at least allow the investors to break even. A long-running hit means that those who are willing to take a chance on the play receive financial reward. And then they talk about Les Mis was an example of one. Global box office receipts for the musical Les Miserables exceeded 1.8 million. Sometimes, however, even a failure at the box office can bring financial reward in the form of a tax write-off. Okay, so people who go into commercial theater, they're looking to make money specifically, where you know, a lot of people who are just in theater in general, whether it's they're able to express themselves creatively or they just love it, you know, but this is like, we're here to make money, okay? Nonprofit theaters may be professional but are not commercial. They share the characteristic that no individual or organization realizes a profit from the investment in production. Any money that is taken in at the box office or earned from other sources is funneled back into the arts organization to support other shows and programs. Okay, so a nonprofit theater, if we're really going to dive into this, some of your other, a Studio 10, maybe Actors Point Theater Company, maybe are professional. They pay their actors, but other than that, the money is put back into their facility, whether that's you know, the rights for the next play that they're going to do or whatever. You normally don't have a huge like board of directors that is each taking a cut. Resident theaters are professional nonprofit organizations that maintain a constant presence in the community and produce an entire season of plays. These theaters, sometimes called regional theaters, again, Nashville Repertory Theater is one. Studio 10 in Franklin is probably another. Street Theater may be one as well. Again, they pay their actors, and they usually have a whole season of shows. They talk about the League of Resident Theaters. LORT provides support for its members, particularly in communicating with the federal government and by serving as a collective bargaining agent with the various employee unions. Okay, and then they talk about LORT memberships. The Shakespeare Theater, the Guthrie Theater, the Alliance Theater Company. So you have a couple things going on here. You have actors that can be part of a union, okay, like your Actors Equity and stuff. And basically they are, once you get to that point that you are part of a union, you're protected. You cannot have a 21-hour rehearsal day. It is not going to happen. You're violating all sorts of codes from the union, and that is what they're in place to do. The LORT, though, the League of Resident Theaters, comes in to help protect the actual theater company. So two separate things. Amateur theater. The designation amateur theater is used when the practitioners do not rely on theatrical activity for their livelihood. Basically, they love to do it. Okay, that would be, they're also called community theaters. They're kind of interchangeable here. Hendersonville Performing Arts Company, Murfreesboro Center for the Arts. I know that there's one in Robertson County, but it's escaping me. Boiling Room Theater in Franklin, Circle Players in Nashville. Those are all amateur theater. People that are so talented, they love what they do, but they do not need to get paid to do that. They would normally work a day job. Their rehearsals are at night. They talk about educational theater, maybe extracurricular or integrated into classroom structures. The Educational Theater Association, EDTA, rewards excellence in student work and supports the work of theater educators. And so a lot of the people who are working with educational theater are students who are getting a bachelor's or a master's or, you know, graduate studies, PhD or whatever in theater, and then they are working with EDTA to put their creativity onto the stage. They talk separately again about community theater, which a lot of times ties into the amateur theater. It says, is created by residents of a particular area who come together to create theater without being part of a larger institution. Again, this is mostly roped in with amateur theater. I guess a true community theater would be like a group of people that are like, hey, we want to put on a play. but they're not associated with an actual name. You know what I mean? It's just like, hey, me and my friends, we're going to rent a play, you know, pay for the rights, and we're going to, you know, perform it at my friend's house. Not that that's common. Most of the time it goes through a theater, whether that's an amateur or community theater, but your text is describing community theater is a little different. But go ahead, just for the sake of sanity, go ahead and lump them together. They talk about these hybrid theaters. Many theaters do not fit neatly into either the professional or amateur category. For our purposes, we will use the term hybrid theaters, okay? Small resident theaters may hold a contract with Actors Equity, all right? That's the union that protects actors. Although they may still hire union and non-union performers. I did a show a couple of years ago where the company hired they had 2 equity contracts, so our 2 leads were like awesome because they're the best and they're part of a union, right? They do this for a living, and then everybody else we were still paid, but we were non-union. You talk about summer stock theaters may hire well-trained students and experienced community members for seasonal work. A lot of like, I think stuff that takes place like in Branson, Missouri and stuff, a lot of that is like summer stock. Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, a lot of that stuff is summer stock as well. Oh my gosh, it's already 31 minutes into this. I apologize. Oh, okay, good. We're about done. All right, so hopefully that helps for your paper writing. I think I've listed them. I know I've listed them in the syllabus of what you can research. Again, dig, dig, dig. I don't want to know like what you found. I want to know what and why. Okay? So hopefully that also helps with your presentation or PowerPoint slides and giving some context to those bullet points. All right. Have a good week, and don't forget to take your pretest and post your thoughts on our discussion question, and then respond to 2 other classmates. The earlier you can do this and get on, the more discussion we can have, and I think we'll really be able to get into some cool stuff. All right. Thanks, guys.